Mia Smith stood at her father's funeral and did what she had always done in this family. She stayed quiet. She stayed out of the way. She watched. Her sister was at the front of the room, speaking into a microphone with the kind of confidence that comes from never being questioned. The relatives nodded. The lawyers stood near the wall with their folders. The future of the Smith family was being discussed openly, in full detail, in front of everyone. Mia's name had not come up once. Not once in 40 minutes. She wasn't surprised. She had stopped being surprised by this family a long time ago. She was the second daughter, the quiet one, the one who left and built a life somewhere else, and came back to this room to find that nothing had saved a place for her. But here is what no one in that room knew. 3 months ago, Mia pulled a dying man back from the edge of death in a trauma bay at 2 a.m. No fanfare, no audience, just her hands, her instinct, and a question nobody else thought to ask. That man watched her work that night the way people watch something they recognize, something rare. He never forgot it. And today, while her sister spoke about legacy and the family name and everything their father built, that man walked through the funeral doors. Alone. No security, no announcement, no explanation. He found a spot at the back of the room and he stood there quietly. Mia saw him first. Her sister was still talking. She had no idea what had just walked in. And neither did Mia, not fully, not yet. But something shifted in that room the moment he arrived. Something quiet and irreversible. The way a temperature drops before a storm. Her father was gone. But whatever her father had set in motion before he died, it was already in the room. Christy J's story is a home. For every woman who was overlooked, underestimated, and still standing. You belong here. Subscribe, share this with someone who needs it today. And drop a comment telling me where in the world you're watching from and what time it is in your city. Now let's continue. The ER at Mercy General never slowed down on a Thursday night. Mia had learned that early. 3 years on the trauma floor will teach a person things that no textbook covers. It teaches patience. It teaches speed. It teaches the difference between urgency and panic, because urgency saves lives, and panic just fills the room with noise. Mia had no patience for noise. The man on the gurney was brought in at 11:47 p.m. 2 men came with him. They gave their names at the front desk quickly, clearly, like men who had practiced giving names in rooms they didn't want to be in. They said he collapsed at dinner. They said nothing else. Then they moved to the wall near the door and stood there watching with the kind of stillness that had nothing to do with concern. The attending physician on call that night was Dr. Reeves. Good doctor. Fast. Thorough. He started calling out orders the moment the gurney came through. The room moved. IV lines, blood pressure cuff, oxygen monitor. Everyone doing exactly what they were trained to do. Mia moved too. But differently. She stood at the side of the gurney and she looked at him the way she looked at every patient who didn't fit a clean category. Quietly, completely. Starting from the top and working down. No obvious trauma. No smell of alcohol. Skin slightly clammy but not cold. Breathing shallow but rhythmic. Eyes. She checked his eyes. Pupils slightly uneven. Not dramatically, just enough. She reached for his collar, moved it slightly to the left. There it was. A faint discoloration along the base of his neck, barely visible. The kind of thing you miss if you're moving fast, if you're looking at the monitors instead of the man. She wasn't looking at the monitors. She straightened up and turned to Dr. Reeves. I need a full talk screen, and I need someone to go ask those 2 men by the door what he ate tonight that he wouldn't normally eat. Reeves looked up. We don't have any indication that... I know. She was already moving. Run it anyway. He ran it. The result came back 41 minutes later and confirmed exactly what she had already mapped out in her head. A compound. Slow-acting. Tasteless. The kind of thing that looks like a cardiac event if nobody asks the right question. She had asked the right question. The man stabilized at 2:14 in the morning. By the time his color was returning, the 2 men by the door were gone. No goodbye, no thank you, just absent, the way people leave when they've gotten the information they came for. Mia didn't think much about them. She thought about the patient, documented everything carefully, wrote her notes with the same precision she brought to everything she did, filed them, washed her hands. What she didn't know, what she had no way of knowing, was that the man on that gurney had been watching her from the moment she walked in. Not with confusion, not with fear, with recognition. He was a man who spent his life reading rooms, reading people, deciding in seconds who was performing and who was real. It was not a skill he had chosen, it was a skill he had survived by. And Mia Smith, this quiet woman with steady hands and one precise question, was the most real person he had encountered in a very long time. He didn't say anything that night. He didn't need to. He already knew her name from the badge on her chest. He already knew something else, too. Something that she would not discover until months later, standing in a room full of people who had never truly seen her. Her father had called him 6 weeks before that night. The ER was not a coincidence. The call came on a Tuesday morning. Mia was between shifts, sitting at her kitchen table with cold coffee and a medical journal she hadn't actually been reading. Her phone buzzed. She looked at the screen. Her sister, Claire. She picked up on the second ring. Claire didn't say hello. Claire never said hello. She moved straight to information the way she moved through every conversation, efficiently, with the assumption that her time was more valuable than whoever she was speaking to. Dad's gone. This morning. Dr. Harmon said it was his heart. The arrangements are already being handled. I need you here by Friday. A pause, then, Mia, did you hear me? She had heard. She was sitting very still with her hand flat on the table and her eyes on the window, and the word gone moving through her chest like something trying to find a place to settle. I heard you, she said. I'll be there. She landed in Chicago on Thursday evening. The house was already full when she arrived. That was the first thing she noticed. The second thing she noticed was that no one seemed particularly surprised to see her, but no one seemed particularly relieved either. She was expected the way furniture is expected. Present, accounted for, unremarkable. Her Aunt Patricia hugged her near the door and said she looked tired. Her cousin James nodded at her from across the room and turned back to his conversation. Claire was in the study with 2 men in suits, lawyers from the look of them, and she glanced up when Mia appeared in the doorway and said, "Good, you made it. There's food in the kitchen." That was it. That was the welcome. Mia set her bag down in the guest room, the same guest room she had always used because her childhood bedroom had been converted to a home office 7 years ago, and no one had thought to mention it to her, and she sat on the edge of the bed for a moment. She thought about her father. Richard Smith had been a precise man, controlled. He built his business from nothing over 30 years, and he ran it the way he ran his household, with structure, with intention, and with a very clear sense of who mattered in every room he walked into. Mia had never been sure where she fit in his structure. He wasn't cruel, that was important to say. He never raised his voice at her. He never dismissed her openly. He paid for her nursing school without complaint, and he sent a card when she graduated, and the card said, "You always find your way." She had kept that card. She wasn't sure why. It felt like something, even if she couldn't name what. But he never came to the graduation. He had a board meeting. Claire represented the family. That was how it usually went. That night, Mia sat in the corner of the living room and watched her family move around her like water around a stone. Conversations happened. Plans were made. The name Smith was spoken with weight and intention and future tense. She listened for her name. It didn't come. Not once in the entire evening. She went to bed at 11, lay in the dark, listened to the house settle. Under her pillow, because she had nowhere else to put it that felt safe, was a sealed envelope she had found on the floor of her father's study when she went to get a glass of water. Her name was on the front, her father's handwriting. She hadn't opened it yet. She didn't know why she was waiting. Maybe because opening it felt like the last conversation she would ever have with him, and she wasn't ready for it to be over before she understood what it was. She closed her eyes. Tomorrow was the funeral. Whatever came after that, she would face it the way she faced everything, quietly, completely, without flinching. The morning of the funeral arrived gray and still. Mia was up before the house. She made coffee in the kitchen alone and stood at the window watching the backyard. The garden her father had maintained with quiet obsession every weekend for as long as she could remember. The roses were still trimmed, the hedges still neat. Even now, without him, everything in order. That was Richard Smith, precise until the end. She thought about a memory that had been returning to her since she landed. She was 9 years old. Her father was in his study with the door half open, and she had stood in the hallway watching him work. He had papers spread across the desk and his reading glasses on and a cup of tea going cold at his elbow. He was completely absorbed, completely elsewhere. She had stood there for almost 10 minutes. He never looked up. She hadn't knocked. She had just walked away. She thought about that a lot now, not with bitterness, something quieter than bitterness. Something that had lived in her chest for so long it had stopped having a name. Claire came downstairs at 8, dressed already, hair done, moving through the kitchen with purpose. "There will be people arriving by 10, she said, pouring coffee without looking at Mia. "I need you to manage the door. Direct people to the reception room. The lawyers will be here at noon for the preliminary conversation." "Preliminary conversation," Mia repeated. "About the estate. Just a general overview before the formal reading next week." Claire looked up then. Something moved across her face. Not guilt exactly, more like an awareness that she was choosing not to address. "It's a formality, Mia. Nothing you need to worry about today." Mia nodded, finished her coffee. She managed the door. For 2 hours, she stood at the entrance of her father's house and directed mourners, business associates, old friends, distant relatives she barely recognized, into the reception room where Claire held court with practiced grief. People embraced Claire. People told Claire her father would have been proud. People told Claire she had his strength. No one said that to Mia. She was the woman at the door, polite, efficient, invisible. At some point, her cousin James appeared beside her and said, not unkindly, "You doing okay?" "Yes," she said. "It's a lot," he said. Then someone called his name from inside and he went. That was the most sustained conversation she had with anyone that morning. The envelope was still in her room, still sealed. She thought about it between greetings, between smiles, between the small performances of grief that a funeral requires from everyone standing in it. Her father had written her name on that envelope in his own hand. Not Claire's name, not the lawyer's, hers. That meant something. She just didn't know what yet. By the time the funeral service began, cars arriving, people settling, her sister moving to the front with the kind of ease that comes from always knowing your place in a room, Mia had made a decision. She would get through today. She would stand where she was told to stand. She would be quiet and composed and present. And tonight, when the house emptied and the day was done, she would sit alone and open that envelope. And she would finally have the conversation with her father that they never managed to have while he was alive. She took her seat, 3rd row, left side. She folded her hands in her lap and she looked at the front of the room where her father's photograph sat on a stand, a formal portrait, the one he used for the company website, and she let herself feel what she had been holding carefully all morning. She missed him. Not the distance, not the absence, not the 30 years of almost. She missed the version of him she had always hoped was there, the one who had written her name on an envelope and meant something true by it. She missed the father she had never quite been given. The service began, and in the 3rd row on the left side, Mia Smith sat with her hands folded and said goodbye to a man she was still trying to understand. The service ran exactly as Claire had planned it. Of course it did. The flowers were white and deliberate. The program was printed on heavy cream paper. The speaker, a minister who had known their father through the business community, spoke in measured tones about legacy and discipline and a life built with intention. Mia sat in the 3rd row and listened. The minister spoke about Richard Smith the businessman, Richard Smith the community figure, Richard Smith the father, and here he looked warmly at Claire, who sat in the front row with her hands clasped and her eyes appropriately glistening. A man who poured everything he had into the people he loved and the future he was building for them. Mia looked at her hands. Then Claire stood up. She moved to the podium the way she moved through every room, like it had been arranged for her arrival. She unfolded a single sheet of paper and she spoke without trembling, which was the most Claire thing about her. Even grief, she performed with control. She spoke about their father's vision, his standards, his belief that the Smith name meant something and should continue to mean something. She spoke about the responsibility of carrying that forward, the business, the reputation, the weight of everything he had built. She said we the whole time. Mia noticed that. We will carry this forward. We will honor what he built. We will make sure his legacy continues. We. Not once, not in 7 minutes of speaking, did Claire say Mia's name. Not once did she turn to the third row and acknowledge that the other daughter of Richard Smith was sitting 5 feet away. Mia didn't move, didn't shift, didn't let anything change in her face. She had a lot of practice at this. The relatives in the room nodded along. The lawyers near the wall listened with professional patience. The business associates in the back rows wore the expressions of men calculating what came next. Nobody looked at Mia. And then, in the middle of Claire's closing remarks, Mia looked up. Not because of anything Claire said, because something shifted at the back of the room. Not dramatically, not loudly, the way a current changes direction underwater, invisible on the surface, felt underneath. She looked toward the door. He was standing at the back, alone. No one with him. No announcement of arrival. He had simply come in and found a space along the wall, and stood there, the way he stood in the ER 3 months ago. Still, unhurried, completely present. He was watching the room. And then, as if he felt her looking, his eyes moved from Claire at the podium to the third row, to Mia. He didn't nod, didn't acknowledge her outwardly, but he didn't look away either. Mia held his gaze for exactly 3 seconds, then she turned back to the front of the room. Her heart was steady, her hands were still, her face was composed. But something was different now. Something in the room had changed the moment he walked in, and she couldn't explain it, and she wasn't going to try. Claire finished speaking, the room exhaled. The minister said a final word, and Mia sat very still in the third row and thought about a sealed envelope upstairs with her name on it, and a man at the back of the room who had no reason to be here, no reason that she knew of yet. Something is building, and you can feel it. Subscribe to Christy J Story and stay close, because next is where the ground starts shifting. Share this story today. We'll see you soon. The lawyers left at 6, not before they had done what lawyers at these occasions always do, spoken in precise, careful language that communicated everything and committed to nothing. The estate was substantial. The formal reading would take place the following week. In the meantime, the family should feel confident that Richard Smith had been thorough and that his wishes were clearly documented. Claire received this information with a composed nod that told Mia her sister already knew exactly what those wishes were. After the lawyers left, the remaining family gathered in the living room. Aunts, uncles, cousins, the inner circle of the Smith family, arranged on sofas and chairs, with the low energy of people who had been performing emotion all day and were now allowing themselves to relax into something more honest. Claire sat in the armchair nearest the fireplace, their father's chair. She sat in it without ceremony, without acknowledgement, just chose it and settled into it like it was already hers. Maybe it was. Maybe it had been for a long time. Uncle Bernard, their father's older brother, a broad man with a slow voice and the habit of saying important things casually, leaned forward and looked at Claire.
So, the business
Is stable, Claire said. The board knows the transition plan. We've been preparing for this for 2 years. We've been preparing for this for 2 years. Mia was sitting on the sofa near the door. She heard that sentence and filed it quietly.
The property portfolio?
Bernard asked. Stays intact for now. We'll review after the formal reading. Bernard nodded. Then, as if suddenly remembering something minor, the way you remember to close a window before it rains, he glanced at Mia.
And Mia is taken care of in terms of...
Mia will be looked after. Claire's voice was smooth, immediate. Dad made a provision, a settlement. It's more than fair. A settlement. The word landed in the room quietly. Nobody reacted. Nobody questioned it. It was spoken with the finality of something already decided, a detail being confirmed, not discussed. Mia looked at her hands. A settlement. Not a seat at the table. Not a role. Not a conversation. A number. A line item. The kind of care you extend to someone you want to provide for without including. She thought about the envelope in her bag. She had brought it downstairs without planning to. It was in the side pocket of her bag, which was sitting on the floor near her feet. She could feel it there, the way you feel something you're trying not to think about. She looked up. Across the room, in the doorway to the dining room, he was standing. She hadn't heard him come back in. He had been outside for the last hour. She had tracked his absence without meaning to. But now he was there, in the doorway, still holding that same glass of water. He wasn't looking at Claire. He wasn't looking at the lawyer's empty chairs. He was looking at Mia. And in his expression, that careful, contained face that didn't give things away to rooms that hadn't earned them, there was something she hadn't seen there before. Not sympathy. Something steadier than sympathy. The kind of look a person gives when they know something is about to change, and they're waiting to make sure you're ready. She held his gaze. He nodded. Once, almost imperceptibly. Like a confirmation. Like, yes, what you're thinking, you're right. Mia looked back at her sister. Claire was still talking, still arranging, still conducting the room with complete confidence. She had no idea. Mia stepped outside just before 8. The backyard was dark and cool. The garden her father had kept so carefully was reduced to shapes in the low light. The outline of the rose bushes, the straight edge of the hedges, the stone path running down the center of it all. She sat on the back step and held the envelope in both hands, her name in his handwriting. Richard. Her father who sent cards instead of coming. Her father who built a future in a room she was never invited into. Her father who, she understood now, sitting here with the paper between her fingers, had also made a phone call 8 weeks ago to a man who had no reason to be at this funeral. Unless he had every reason. She heard the door behind her. She didn't turn around. She already knew. He came and stood a few feet away, hands in his pockets, looking at the garden the way a person looks at something they're not trying to read. Just observing, letting it be what it was. He called you before the ER, she said, not a question. Yes. She let that sit. So you knew who I was when they brought you in. I knew your name. I knew what your father told me about you. He paused. I didn't know you until that night. She looked down at the envelope. What did he tell you? He was quiet for a moment, then, that you were the one person in this family he was certain of, that he had spent 30 years being careful about everything except the thing that mattered most, and that he needed someone he trusted to make sure what he intended actually happened, because he didn't trust the room to do it honestly without someone watching. Mia was very still. The garden was very quiet. He was sick, she said, not asking, knowing. For 14 months. He didn't tell your sister the full picture. He didn't want the arrangements changed before he could finalize them. She turned the envelope over once in her hands. What did he finalize? Open it, he said simply. She did. The letter was 2 pages, her father's handwriting, careful even, the handwriting of a man who had written contracts for 30 years and knew the weight of words on paper. She read it slowly. She read it twice. When she looked up, the garden was still dark and still, and the shapes of the roses were still just shapes, but something inside her had rearranged itself, quietly, completely, the way things rearrange when the truth finally arrives and turns out to be something you had almost stopped believing in. Her father had known. He had seen, not perfectly, not without his own failures and distances and silences that cost her, but he had seen. And in the last year of his life, he had done the most precise thing he knew how to do. He had planned. She folded the letter back carefully and held it in her lap. He called you because he needed someone outside the family, she said.
Someone the family couldn't influence, he said, and someone who would recognize you when they met you. He told me what to look for. I'll be honest, the ER was faster than I expected. She almost smiled. Almost. Tomorrow, she said, when the family meets. I'll be there. She nodded, looked back at the garden. He didn't move to leave. He didn't fill the silence with reassurance or explanation. He just stood there, present, steady, the way he had stood in the ER while the room moved around him, the way her father, maybe, had hoped she would never have to stand alone. She sat with that for a long moment, then she stood up, brushed off her jacket, held the letter to her chest once. She walked back inside. The family meeting began at 10 the next morning. Claire had arranged it with the same precision she arranged everything. The dining room table was set with coffee and water and the careful neutrality of a space prepared for business. The lawyers were present, 2 of them this time, with folders. Uncle Bernard sat to the right. 2 cousins, both of whom had roles in the company, sat across from him. Mia sat at the far end. Claire sat at the head of the table, her father's seat. She had not asked if anyone minded. Nobody said anything. The senior lawyer, a gray-haired man named Patterson who had represented Richard Smith for 20 years, opened his folder and began. He spoke about the estate in broad terms, the business structure, the property holdings, the investment portfolio. He spoke about Richard Smith's intention to ensure continuity, stability, and clear succession. Claire nodded along at appropriate intervals. The room was relaxed, the outcome already written in the posture of everyone present. This was a formality. The shape of things had already been decided, and everyone in this room understood their place in that shape. Mia sat quietly and waited. Patterson was midway through his second page when the door opened. No knock. He simply walked in. Unhurried, unannounced. The way a man walks into a room when he has been expected, just not by everyone present. Claire looked up. The composure on her face shifted, just slightly, just for a moment, before she reassembled it. "This is a private family meeting," she said, measured, controlled. "I'm aware," he said. He didn't stop walking. He came to the table, pulled out the empty chair beside Patterson, and sat down. He placed a document folder on the table in front of him. He didn't open it yet. Patterson looked at him. Something passed between them. Recognition, Mia thought. They knew each other. Of course they did. "I think we can continue," Patterson said quietly. He looked at Claire. "Mr. Deho has been authorized to be present at this meeting. Your father made that arrangement." Claire's jaw tightened. "My father didn't mention—" "No," Deho said, simply, not unkindly. "He didn't." The room was very still. He let the stillness sit for exactly the right amount of time. Then he opened his folder. He laid 3 documents on the table, side by side, deliberate as a man who had arranged this moment the way her father had arranged his garden. "Richard Smith finalized his estate instructions 11 months ago," he said. "What Mr. Patterson has been presenting is accurate, with one addition that hasn't been addressed yet." He looked up, not at Claire, at Mia. "Your father left the controlling oversight of his estate, not the business operations, but the governing interest in how his legacy is managed and protected, to his younger daughter." The room did not erupt. There was no shouting, no dramatic collapse. There was silence. The specific silence of people who had built certainty out of assumptions and are now watching those assumptions come apart, not with noise, but with the slow, undeniable weight of something that has already been decided and signed and witnessed and filed. Claire's voice came out very carefully. "That isn't—" "It's documented," Deho said. "Signed, witnessed, filed with the court 14 months ago." He slid one of the documents toward the center of the table. "You're welcome to review it." Nobody picked it up immediately. Mia looked at the document. Then she looked at Deho. He met her eyes, and in his expression, that steady, contained face, there was only one thing. This is what he intended. This is what was always true. Now the room knows it too. Nobody moved for a long moment. The document sat in the center of the table like something that had always been there, patient, certain, waiting to be acknowledged. Patterson cleared his throat and straightened his folder. He had the composure of a man who had delivered difficult news across tables for decades and had learned to let the room absorb before continuing. He looked at Claire with professional gentleness and said, "Your father was very deliberate about this. He spent considerable time structuring it carefully." Claire picked up the document. She read it. Mia watched her sister's face. It was an extraordinary thing to observe. Claire, who had managed every room she had ever stood in, sitting with a piece of paper that rearranged everything she had organized. Her expression didn't collapse. It recalibrated. Slowly, feature by feature, it moved from certainty to something more complicated. When she put the document down, she looked at Mia. "You knew," she said. Not an accusation. Something flatter than that. "Not until last night," Mia said. Claire looked at Dae-ho. "And you've been holding this." "Your father asked me to be present when it was disclosed," he said, "to ensure it was received accurately." Received accurately. Claire repeated the words with a careful edge. "He wanted someone in the room who had no stake in the outcome," Dae-ho said. "Someone the process couldn't be renegotiated around." Uncle Bernard shifted in his seat. One of the cousins looked at the other. The room had the specific quality of people recalculating, not dramatically, not loudly, but genuinely and completely. Patterson continued. He walked through the structure precisely. The controlling oversight was not operational. Claire would continue to run the business, the board remained intact, the day-to-day operations were unchanged. What Richard Smith had given Mia was something different. The governing voice. The final say in matters of legacy. The family name, the foundation, the decisions about what the Smith inheritance meant and how it was extended into the future. He had not taken the business from Claire. He had given Mia the thing Claire could never manufacture. Authority over what it all meant. Claire understood that. Mia could see it in her face. The precise moment her sister understood not just what had been given, but why. Richard Smith had watched his older daughter build and run and manage and control. He had trusted her with the machinery, but he had trusted his younger daughter with the meaning. There was a small device on the table. Patterson reached for it now. "Your father recorded a statement," he said. "He asked that it be played at this meeting." He pressed play. Richard Smith's voice came into the room. It was quieter than Mia remembered, older, but precise, still precise, even at the end. "I was not always the father I should have been to my younger daughter. I was careful with many things. I was not careful enough with her. This is my attempt to be accurate before I go. Mia never asked me for anything, which I mistook for not needing anything. I understand now that she was simply never given a reason to ask. She has her mother's patience and her own kind of strength, the kind that doesn't announce itself. I am trusting her with what matters most, because she is the only one I am certain would not use it for herself. She would use it for what it was meant to be. That is the rarest thing I know." The recording ended. The room was completely quiet. Mia sat with her hands flat on the table. Her eyes were dry. She was not performing composure. She simply felt, underneath the weight of everything in that room, something she hadn't expected. Relief. Not triumph, not vindication, just the quiet, bone-deep relief of being seen by the person whose sight you had wanted for 30 years. Even if it arrived late. Even if it arrived like this. She looked at her father's chair at the head of the table, empty now, but not absent. She signed the documents Patterson placed before her. 3 signatures, steady hand, no hesitation. Then she looked at Claire. Her sister was looking at the table. When she looked up, something had shifted in her face too. Something Mia had never seen there before. Not softness exactly, more like the beginning of a question Claire had never let herself ask. Mia didn't say anything. Some things didn't need to be said today. Today she had signed her name to something true. That was enough. The meeting ended quietly. People gathered their things, the lawyers packed their folders.
Bernard stood and put his hand briefly on Mia's shoulder as he passed. One firm press, no words, and she understood it as the most honest thing he had offered her in 30 years of family occasions. The cousins left without ceremony. Claire stayed seated long after everyone else had stood. Mia didn't rush her. She waited until the room had mostly cleared, and then she looked at her sister. Claire. Claire looked up. He trusted you with the thing he knew you'd do best, Mia said. He knew what you built. He wasn't taking that from you. Claire was quiet for a long moment. Then, I didn't know he was this sick. He didn't tell me the full picture. I know. I would've... She stopped, started again. I didn't know. I know, Mia said again, and she meant it without complication. Claire had her own grief here, her own version of a father who had managed her from a careful distance. That wasn't Mia's to resolve today, but it was real. She picked up her bag, folded the letter, her father's letter, and placed it carefully in the inside pocket, close. She walked through the house one more time. Not quickly, she moved through each room the way she had always moved, observing, present, unhurried. The living room, the hallway, the study where she had found the envelope on the floor. She stopped in the doorway of the study. The desk was still neat, papers still stacked, his reading glasses folded beside the lamp. You always find your way. She understood it now. It wasn't coldness. It wasn't distance. It was the observation of a man who had watched his daughter navigate every room she was placed in and emerge intact, and didn't know how to say that what he felt about it was not indifference. It was certainty. She stepped away from the doorway and walked to the front door. Outside, the morning was cool and pale. Her car was parked at the edge of the drive. She walked toward it slowly, breathing the outside air after a day and a half inside rooms full of managed grief and careful words. He was leaning against his car, parked 2 spaces down. He had his jacket on and his hands in his pockets, and he was doing what he always seemed to be doing, simply being present in a space without requiring anything from it. She stopped a few feet away. You didn't have to stay, she said. I know, he said. She looked at him. He called you before the ER. He arranged all of this before he even knew we'd meet. He knew the kind of person I'd be looking for, Deho said. He trusted that I'd recognize her. She was quiet for a moment. And did you? In the ER? He looked at her the way he had looked at her that night, that careful, complete attention. The moment you asked the right question. She nodded slowly. The morning was still and cool and the street was quiet, and for the first time in as long as she could remember, Mia Smith was standing outside her father's house not as the invisible daughter, not as the one who managed the door and sat in the 3rd row and waited for her name to be spoken in a room. She was standing as herself, completely, finally. She unlocked her car, opened the door, paused. Thank you, she said. Not for the documents, not for the meeting, for something harder to name, the thing he had done simply by being present, by being a witness, by recognizing her before she was asked to prove herself. He nodded once. She got in the car. She sat for a moment with her hands on the wheel and her father's letter in her pocket, and 30 years of quiet, finally, feeling like something it was allowed to be. Then she started the engine, and she drove. Christy J's story is a home for every woman who was overlooked, underestimated, and still standing. Mia's story is done, but there are more stories where this one came from. Subscribe so you never miss one. Share this with someone who needed to hear it today. And leave a comment. Tell us which moment in Mia's story hit you the hardest. We read every single one. Thank you for being here. This channel exists because of you.